As you've probably seen by my title, this is a video of my Hazbin Reimagined series featuring the Vees. If you're new here and have questions, the answer may be in my previous videos, linked in the description. I'd first like to thank all of you for your love and support. I could never imagine that I could get this close to my childhood dreams of becoming a successful YouTuber. Thank you again. As soon as I hit my goal of 3,000 subscribers, I'll launch my Discord, where you can access any of my music, original concepts of my redesigns, and have a space to talk with each other. Anyhow, onto the topic of this video. In the original show, the Vees were 3 overlords who seemed to control everything entertainment in the Pride Ring, especially Vox, who managed to hook up to and trip all of the electricity in Pentagram City. Now, I'm not against them being huge influencers and controlling the majority of media throughout my version of Hell, but since in my version the main ring of Hell is not the Pride Ring and contains more than one city, I need to change their scale of influence. Hazbin Hotel is only based in one ring of Hell, the Pride Ring, whereas my version contains all 9 rings, which sinners can move between. This gives the Vees the ability to branch out throughout all of Hell, becoming even more important than they were in the main show. V Tower is one of the largest structures in the Greed Ring, being where the majority of their business is done, and where the 3 Vees mainly reside, aside from when they go to their respective bases to check on their employees. The tower originally belonged to Vox and was much smaller. Then with the addition of both Velvette and Valentino, it started to become a lot taller and incorporated more subsections of entertainment. In each of their individual sections, I'll describe the specifics of where each of the Vees are located and what they do. Let's start with Velvette. In show, Velvette is kind of a nothing burger. I had no idea what to make of her since her design's pretty plain, aside from her hair and outfit of course. I still don't get her lips. I interpret the top lip as a beak, but it's still kind of random. The moment I knew what to make of her was when she was defeated in Season 2, where it became clear that she was a doll demon. In my design, I wanted her to have a lot of variation, like a mannequin. She alters her body every time the ideal body type shifts, with only her head being the same every iteration. In my Step On Up video, I showed that she was around before the 2010s, unlike the show where she was the youngest V, and so my version is older, giving her plenty of experience in how to adapt to the times. Absolutely everything has to be scrapped and made anew every time she's made aware of any microtrend going on the surface. It's not just body type, hair and outfit that change frequently either. Even her facial features are made of different parts that constantly get swapped around and exchanged to fit with her outfits. I do think she'd wear every single colour under the rainbow, but I stuck to pinks, purples, blacks and greys to keep her visual clarity clear. You might see her wear blues too, but I prefer keeping her pink, her favourite colour. I wanted to draw her in all her fits, but she has a lot and mixes and matches, so I made something of a dress-up game in my drawing file with multiple hairstyles, makeup, tops, bottoms, etc. I'll release the file in my Discord when it opens for you guys to have a go. She's quite self-centered and judgmental in the show, with her talking down to anyone who she deems unworthy of her respect despite their role or status, and her also having absolutely zero filter. She calls herself backbone of the Vees in her song Respectless, which does raise some questions about the relationship between the 3 of them and who really is keeping the actual company together. In my version, Velvette is still the backbone of the Vees, in fact being the main face of the 3 of them, especially in interviews, advertisements and meetings. She's a good journalist and designer, able to spin and write stories on the go, and also can tell whenever someone she is interviewing is holding something back and push them until they break. This is all just skills gathered in life, of course. We don't know much about Velvette's backstory in the show, only really that she is the youngest member of the Vees and seeming to be well versed in social media and always on her phone. My Velvette is also very into online culture, though wasn't raised with it. In life, she was a high-end fashion designer in around the 60s, creating her own brand and very popular magazine that is still being sold nowadays on Earth. She's not famous like celebrity status, but is mentioned frequently by fashion students, and her fashion empire legacy that she left behind when she died. Her death is still shrouded in mystery on Earth, with evidence showing that she died by her own hands, but this is highly debated. The scene of her death was highly chaotic, with broken sewing machines, ripped fabric, torn paper, and a half-empty gun. In Hell, Velvette has made it a point that no one is allowed to speculate on how she died. Velvette has similar powers to her show's version. I'm not a big fan of her using audience participation, but it fits her moveset rather well in my version. Her raw power isn't very high, as only a select set of people on Earth still talk about her, but she can use the power of Vox's followers via her phone to cast spells. I had to add a little witchiness into her design, like in the show, since I do want her to also craft love potions as well. In addition to that, her phone is a weapon gifted to her by Vox, as a way to let her into the big leagues when she partnered with him. She's not a huge fan of Vox, but is best friends with Valentino. They met when she was still starting out in Hell, with her starting a small fashion studio, which quickly became the hot new thing. Valentino was originally her biggest buyer, before simply becoming her business partner. Velvette isn't attracted to Valentino, her preference being women, with whom she is surrounded with at all times, as all her employees are her type. She has carried her complete disregard of power imbalances in the workplace to her afterlife, as she has had or has a situationship with all 101 of her employees. They all love her, though this may cause infighting, which she loves to see happen. She keeps her employee souls, though this is more due to employee retention. Until they get fired, she keeps their souls. In comparison with the two other Vees, Velvette is the closest to redemption. Her sins simply aren't as bad as the other twos, as she never incited violence, killed, or essayed anyone. She simply was a terrible, selfish boss with a distinct lack of empathy. Valentino, the suave, moth-like head of the adult entertainment industry in Hell. He's in fact the most controversial member of the three Vees, being the abuser of one of the main characters in the original show, Angel Dust, which I still haven't gotten to yet, and yet is portrayed as quite silly and more likable in the most recent season. I don't personally have a problem with this, as this mimics how an abuser would act with their perceived equals and perceived inferiors. He does in fact act just like how you'd expect, while also being goofy in the same episode or even scene. I will keep this sort of juxtaposition with my version of Valentino, since I just agree with the writing. In terms of design, I also don't have much to say. His design works very well, as at a glance you can tell exactly what he is, a moth pimp. I just added some tweaks to fit my style and the general world I'm going for. To begin with, I changed his face a lot. I don't really like the pseudo-human thumb heads that characters like Valentino and Penchas have, and I prefer they lean more animalistic, or in this case, insect-like. So he has some segmentation on parts of his face, mandibles which can flick downwards, and very bright eyes with no sclera or pupil. His original design had a top hat, which, as you should know, is a no-go. Top hats are reserved for Lucifer, so I changed it into a more large, wide-brimmed hat to add interest to his silhouette, and to also make him look more pimp-like. I don't know why one of his antennae is broken in the show, but I do like the asymmetry, so I kept it. I made his glasses circular since I added a ton of hearts to his fur, and this also makes the glasses functional. I do love his wings turning into robes, so he keeps that trait in my design, and I'll show the speed paint of it later when this one finishes. In terms of personality, he is very much the same. He's quite funny around his friends, which includes Velvette as his best friend, Vox, and a great many adult film producers that he keeps in contact with, who abuse those under him just like he does. He only thinks of Angel and all other demons under his control via soul contract as his property, and mistreats them and uses them like objects. In life, Valentino was basically what he is now, a pimp. He was highly successful, eventually being discovered for trafficking at least 10,000 girls into Los Angeles for adult work. He was put into prison immediately and was sentenced to death via gas chamber after a long period of solitary confinement where his only companion was a lone light bulb, which subconsciously affected his hellish appearance. He has a few quirks, such as walking in large arcs around light sources, like how moths and insects orbit light sources, and smoking a copious amount of infernal bliss, which is a hell-only drug which is highly addictive and offers little high. His eyes can register lights well, but he's incredibly blind in the dark, and his glasses are at a very high strength to fix his extreme short-sightedness. He and Velvette also discuss their employees and trade them. Vox actually doesn't take part in this at all, since he's very particular about who his underlings are. Valentino's relationship with Vox is quite toxic, them being extremely on and off in sometimes spans of minutes. Valentino wants Vox's attention, and Vox wants Valentino's attention, which doesn't work more often than not, as each conversation that doesn't involve long monologues just resurfaces resentment they have for each other. In fact, his antenna was broken off in a fight with Vox about some inane topic they both don't remember, but he doesn't use his antennas as much as he could, so he hasn't tried to fix it. The only time they're not at each other's throats is when it's a meeting that also includes Velvette, who essentially glues them together. They're also way too proud to show that their relationship is flawed. They can have sweet moments, but those are extremely few and far between. Now, Vox is a figure most of you already know very well, being one of the only characters in the original show to have a backstory and a song to go with it. In addition to this, I figure that the majority of you would have also watched my Step On Up video, which shows the designs I have for the various forms of Vox over the years. Eagle-eyed viewers may have also seen the numerous Easter eggs I put in there. Vox is a pretty cool character, and practically carried Season 2 for me, especially since his motives have more foundation than even the main characters. You can actually see his point of view. I have reimagined how various scenes would actually play out, though those videos will come out later. In my Step On Up animation, I only showed my Vox design near the tail end of the video, in a mock-up version of what I imagined he would look like when he addressed Hell. It's highly simplified for animation purposes, but everything is basically in its right place. Something you can immediately tell in my design is that I got rid of the hat. Remember, only Lucifer can have a top hat, and also the stripes. I don't like the Chris Chan patterning, and I honestly really don't like how many character designs have them in the show. I instead just gave him a similar suit with some inspiration from sharks in the tail part of the outer coat. I also reduced the number of colours on him to make him more easily recognisable. I wanted to have both red and blue in his design and wasn't satisfied with just his eye being red. In extension, I gave him some red pipes which helped him move around his hydraulics and also look cool. His older cells have the left side of their screen blacked out since he was long-sighted in one eye when he died, and also had heterochromia, which translates to his sinner design. I wanted to incorporate dead fish eyes, so his eyes are mostly blank with no proper pupils. His mouth also has dark corners to make him look a little creepier too. I also wanted to draw what he looked like without any clothes, to show that his current body is not organic, as it is not his original form, and in fact is controlled remotely. His first design is also his first body, with him just controlling different robotic bodies to maneuver Hell. This is chiefly because he doesn't want to get himself damaged. The ease in which Alistair can hurt him makes him reluctant to go out without as many precautions as he can manage. This is also a nod to Lucifer, as they bear many similarities, especially in regards to overthrowing heaven. Vox intends to use Lucifer's power, and in doing so, become equal to Lucifer. In life, Vox was a prominent TV show host with a very, very dedicated fanbase. At the peak of his popularity, he announced he was leaving the air and using all of his money to found a town in the middle of nowhere. True to his word, this place was created, with him being the mayor and head priest, which was suspicious since he was never one to talk about faith in any sense of the word. Suddenly, some of his previous rivals started disappearing, and then more prominent figures that raised concerns about his village. Nothing came of any lingering suspicion, however, until his death, where around a decade or two later, people started uncovering that his idyllic town that he founded was in fact the foundation of a cult of personality, and a great many of his followers were still amongst the population of the American people. Even now, he has some worshippers who thought he was right in all of his quite misguided opinions, which included ideas like him being the closest to God, and that he'd share his power with them, alive or dead. This also gave him some soul contracts immediately upon entering Hell, with some of his ritual sacrifices. Vox doesn't make a deal for someone's soul without good reason. Unlike his two fellow Vees, he treats soul contracts with a lot of caution, and usually doesn't give anything in return. All his souls under his power were willingly given by his employees, who mostly were his cultists when he was alive. He refuses to sign deals because of his experience with Alistair. When drinking one fateful day, Vox let slip that he thought they were a very good duo, as they had been vanquishing overlords at the time, which prompted Alistair to give him a soul contract. For proper partnership, he said. When faced with that betrayal, Vox immediately became enraged and had a feud with Alistair ever since. Alistair thinks that Vox is weak, like he does in the show, especially since Vox formed the three Vees very quickly after refusing the soul contract. He believes the three of them cannot equal even one of him, and treats Vox as a joke, though he is aware that Vox isn't entirely helpless, especially in his original form. Vox wants to go to heaven, mainly since the Speaker of God screwed up while recording Vox and brought him up to the gates, a combination of the automatic system judging him as sin-free, and the Speaker of God being too distracted to check. But when St. Peter checked his records, he sent him down to hell. He's the only sinner to witness what heaven looks like, and in extension is the only sinner to know what could have been. His vision of getting up there and overthrowing the high angels in heaven is given some credence, as he describes heaven in such grandiose detail that he incites sinners to join him without much friction at all, even convincing Lucifer to join his cause in powering his weapon. Later on in the story, Vox has his popularity plummet, since he downplays the severity of the exterminations due to the Vees having never fully experienced it. They stay in V Tower for the duration, which is defended enough to deter executioner angels. I don't want to reveal what exactly happens in this, as I plan to make a comic or animate this part of the plot. And finally, to complete the Vees, we have Shok.wav. Shok was originally a passion project with Baxter, who was employed by Vox for the sole purpose of building it. Shok is Vox's favourite person, thing, and he spoils Shok constantly with treats and sinners that both Velvette and Valentino don't want. I didn't change his design too much, just making him more shark-like and giving him more fins and pipes like Vox. It makes sense for them to look similar since Vox commissioned him. And that's all for the Vees. Thank you for watching, your patronage is so appreciated. I love making these videos for you, and I hope that you'll stick around for more. Like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell if you'd like. I try and upload once a month at the very least. Okay, bye.